Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
All right, here is Mr. Tim Pate and Jim Matheson. Hello again, gentlemen.
All right.
Hello, hello, hello.
I was raised up on the mountain, there high up on solid ground, and I had my head way up in the clouds. One day I had come down, one day I had come down. So I ventured to the flatlands, they just go on and on. Before I ever got to the other side, I started missing home. Started missing home. You know, them people, they were not as friendly. They'd all been traumatized by the rush of this civilization. They were all trapped inside. So they went and they made a war so they could drive around a big old car. And they drive it all up in circles, but they never really get that far. I'm going back to my mountain, and there I'll spend my days. And I'll make love to my mountain girl, and I'll smoke my OG haze, and I'll live my old school ways.
We have a film clip, and this is a film clip that we've lifted off the web there from your Time for Hemp archives, Casper. So we're going to watch this clip and come back and discuss it some more with you.
All right.
Make time for hemp.
A couple of years ago, I read a book I think that a lot of us have read by now called The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and it was in that book there was a reprint of an article. The one thing in that book that I saw that could not be argued with was an article that came out in 1938 edition of Popular Mechanics magazine, February edition, if anybody wants to go check it out, that said a new $1 billion crop for the farmers. Most people that I talked to had no idea, just like me, that hemp and marijuana was the same thing. We were ignorant of that fact. Also, we were ignorant of the fact that hemp could be used as food. It can be used as clothing. The first Levi's in this country were made from hemp. The first Bibles were printed on hemp paper. The Declaration of Independence, the first 2 copies of this was printed on hemp paper. People don't know that. The leading agricultural crop there in 1937 was hemp. When they took that away from the farmers, it would be like taking wheat away from Kansas, cotton away from Texas. It's just devastating what has happened to the farmers in that area since their leading agricultural crop, which, as we've all seen, is a very beneficial, and not only beneficial, necessary plant that the earth needs. If it wasn't supposed to be there, the big guy wouldn't put it there. You know, he didn't make no mistakes. So he put hemp here for a reason. One of the reasons, I believe, is that the root is like 10 to 12 inches long, which literally holds the planet together. Now, what happens when you eradicate a plant from the planet? If you check history, every civilization that has gone under since the beginning of time has gone under because of soil erosion and the inability of the people to be able to feed themselves. Now, is that a serious problem today? Look at Bangladesh.
Yeah, really is.
Look at the places on the planet where hemp has been made illegal to grow. In the state of Iowa, that state in the last 100 years has lost over 50% of its topsoil.
Wow.
So we're talking about farming areas that are going down the drain because of some some very well-planned conspiracy to take the hemp plant off the planet to keep it from being competition to the other products that it would be competition to, your petrochemicals, your paper, all the textiles. Now, business is business, as they say, and anything is fair in love and war. But when you start taking something that valuable away from the planet, you're affecting other things other than just business associates. You're affecting our children who eat, and you're affecting yourself and me. We're taking food away from, healthy food away from our families, and we're taking the healthy soil away from our planet. Knowledge, education, I think this is the first thing that has to be done. The American farmer has to be made aware that 50 years ago this was a legal crop, and why was it taken away? I think he has to start asking himself, why is this hidden from me? Let his curiosity start growing. Why did my grandfather plant hemp, and why can I not plant hemp? Now, I've heard all about the big scare of the marijuana thing, but most people who have lived any length of time at all and have been around anything at all on this planet knows that if we have any serious problems in the world, which we do, marijuana is not one of them.
No, not really.
Not one of them. When you start listing our serious problems, it's way down on the list somewhere. And it might be even one of our greatest assets that has been disguised to make appear to be a bad guy. So I think what the farmer should do, and not only the farmer, every taxpayer out there, everybody who's affected, everybody who eats food, should start wondering, why are we so kept in the dark over this one plant, the hemp plant? The fact that you're able to do this television show, and I'm here talking on it, and if people are able to watch it on their television, it means that this idea has come. It's time for people to consider it and make a decision, one way or another. And it's a question you have to ask yourself. Is it important? Is the planet worth saving? Can hemp really save the planet? If it can, why is it kept such a secret from us? Ask yourself these questions, call around, do some research, and make your own conclusions. It's a threat to the petrochemicals. It's a threat to synthetic energy. So naturally, it's going to be a battle to be fought. Farm Aid funds many different organizations, agricultural movements in all the states, all the areas, and it's very simple to find out who in your area represents the farmers, the Farmers Alliance or whatever. There's many organizations, and you can look in your phone book or ask your neighbor and find out who Or you can also call 1-800-FARM-AID.
Cool.
So he's still doing Farm Aid here
Yes,
20 years later.
yes,
he
he is.
looks a lot younger. You look a lot younger. I used to look a lot younger way back then, too. We all did.
Yeah, I had
we
hair
were
then.
around.
Yeah.
Oh, that was you.
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah, back when you had hair.
Back then I had hair.
All right. All right.
And if you watch, you see that the leaf wilts.
The leaf wilts a little bit during the show.
It's a legitimate marijuana leaf. Willie was
Freshly picked, huh?
So that was in 91?
1991.
Back in October of 1990, I was with Willie when he drove from Lexington, Kentucky, across the state of Kentucky to Louisville and did a benefit concert for Gatewood Galbraith. And that was a pretty neat and historic show. And you know what? The ramifications of that journey still reverberate and are growing. Right. Willie's heavily invested in biodiesel. He's going to be doing a big biodiesel concert this summer and a lot more things. So
and
we have his children playing at our Hempstock Festival.
We do.
And
Growing in inexpensive, readily available containers allows each plant to be cared for individually, including the water and nutrient regimen. Weak, sick, and problem plants are easy to cull from the garden.
What this does is it gives you the ability to put the plants where you want them. And if they're planted in the ground, you don't have that ability.
Container preference is often a matter of convenience, cost, and availability.
The rule of thumb is to have approximately 1 gallon of container for each month that the plant's alive. Now this pot is a 3-gallon container. Okay, so what this means is this plant can grow in here easily for another couple of months, no problem. The reason these containers are normally black is so that the roots inside the container receive no light. This is very important. Roots cannot have light.
Growers prefer pots that are taller than they are wide because they allow the cannabis root system to penetrate deeply.
One of the first things we need to consider when we look at containers are the drainage holes. Drainage holes are incredibly important, and we have to have an adequate amount.
Containers should have at least 2 half-inch holes per square foot of bottom.
What we need to do is continually pour more water and nutrients on the top and let it drain out the bottom. The container should also have a saucer underneath to contain some of the runoff water. Now, if the water stays in the bottom, it'll rot the roots. It's that simple. Notice also that the plants are put in here about as tight as you can get them, because they really do not need much space when they're small.
Huddle small, containerized plants tightly together under the brightest area below the HID lamp and move them further apart as they grow. In general, each 40-inch square space will hold from 16 to 32 plants.
Now let's look at growing mediums. There's 2 basic kinds of growing mediums. First is a soilless mix. This is a medium that does not have any elements in it that will react with the plant. So you can fertilize it, and that's it. You have complete control. This is what hydroponic gardens use.
Soilless mixes are inexpensive, lightweight, and sterile growing mediums.
You've got rock wool, which is spun rock fiber. You've got coconut husks that have been cleaned up and pressed together. And then you've got something like this, which is a mix of several components, mainly perlite and peat moss.
Texture of soilless mixes should be coarse, light, and spongy to allow drainage and sufficient moisture and air retention.
The next type is an organic medium. Many people prefer organic soil. I like organic soil real well, but I have to be careful with it just like you should. So if you're a new grower, first-time grower, I would suggest that you try a simple soilless mix that holds water evenly and drains well.
The pH scale from 1 to 14 measures acid to alkaline balance. 1 is most acidic, 7 is neutral, and 14 most alkaline. Cannabis flourishes when the pH is between 6.5 and 7. Hydroponic solutions perform best in a slightly lower pH range, from 5.8 to 6.8. Measure the pH with a soil test kit, litmus paper, or electronic pH tester. Accurate measurement and control is essential to a strong, healthy garden.
Here's a dynamic example of pH and why you should control it. Notice that these little plants are all yellow. Well, the reason they're yellow is because the pH is too low, and since the pH is too low, the nitrogen is locked out. That's why they're yellow.
The easiest way to stabilize the pH of a soil that's too acidic is to mix 1 cup of fine dolomite lime per cubic foot of soil. The easiest way to stabilize soil pH that's too base is to add a fertilizer that contains sulfur. Ideally, soil temperature should range between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
If it starts getting up to 75 degrees, you're going to have problems. You're going to have a lot more insect trouble, and you're going to have fungus problems and basically rot.
Right. A website for Village Voice Media, and started up in November 2009. Been going 14 months now. I got the chance because I was already doing a little bit of work for Village Voice on the SF Weekly. I did a twice-weekly cannabis column for them, and that turned into the offer to do Talk of the Town. Of course, when that opportunity came along, I was glad to take it. It's a great job. I get to write about my favorite subject every day, all day long. Right. And so far, it's been going great. It is up to about 500,000 hits a month now, so that's good, and it seems to be growing all the time. And of course, when
yeah, that's a lot of hits. That ranks you right up there in what, like the top? Well, I don't know, what is it? 50,000 sites, something like that.
I'm right at about 40,000 right now.
40,000.
So, yeah, so that for a 14-month-old site,
that's amazingly well.
That's not too bad. And of course, that kind of thing leads to other things. When they gave me the chance to like fling open that gate and put all the information I could through there, I definitely wanted to go for it, because what we need is more of the truth out there. That is the only thing that is going to change this war against marijuana, is the truth. We do have that on our side. I mean, they have the prison industrial complex, they have a vast propaganda machine, and they have 75 years of prejudice on their side. But that is nothing when it comes up against the facts and the truth that we definitely have working for us. Yeah. One of the things that has happened as a result of Talk of the Town is that the Village Voice chain up until now has had only one paid pot critic in the entire network, and that's been a guy named William Breathes.
In Denver.
At Denver Westward. And of course, he got a lot of coverage when he started.
He's only been there about a year, though, right?
About a year is right. Well, and I guess this is the announcement because it hasn't really been talked about anywhere yet, so I'll say it now. The second pot critic for Village Voice will be me, and I'll be starting with a column next week in Seattle Weekly.
All right.
So that's another great thing to be excited about, and that'll be a chance also to get information out there. One of the things I've been impressed about with Village Voice is they have never told me that I can't say anything. They've never told me that I can't put anything I want out there. And of course, you don't abuse a privilege like that. You use it to the best of your ability and to get all the facts and the truth about cannabis out there. And of course, each time that one door opens, that can often lead to another one. And now there is a publishing company out of New York that has had me do a little introductory type of book called The Little Black Book of Marijuana. And that is part of a series of little black books that they have. Up until this point, they have done subjects like wine, beer, chocolate, and it's little gift books. And marijuana has become mainstream enough now that their next one will be about marijuana.
Can you say who the publisher of that is?
Peter Pauper Press, upstate New York. That'll be coming out this spring. I don't have an exact publication date, but the book is finished, and it's at the publisher now. It's a short book. It's about a 20,000 word book, and they told me, okay, cover the entire history of marijuana from the beginning, and you got 20,000 words in 2 months.
Right.
So
with pictures.
It has a few pictures in it too. It has some nice bud pictures. We knew we couldn't do a respectable pot book without some good bud pictures.
That's it.
And thanks to some excellent photographers, there's a dispensary photographer from San Francisco named Kim Kemp, and there is an up-and-coming photographer that I expect great things from in Seattle named Linda Finkel. They both have some work in this book, and very impressive work, and some very impressive herbs.
Good.
The first law governing marijuana required all farmers in the Virginia colony to actually grow hemp, the fiber produced by the marijuana plant. Hemp was valuable because you could use its fibers for rope and canvas, its seeds for soap and lamp oil. Most of the sails and ropes on colonial ships were made from hemp, as were many of the colonists' clothing, maps, and even Bibles. Both the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution were written on hemp parchment.
In 1850, marijuana is put in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. Doctors are using and prescribing marijuana in the United States beginning in the 1850s. It is sold by the legitimate drug companies.
And marijuana policy remained that way for almost a century. Then along came Harry J. Anslinger. He earned his living chasing rum runners during Prohibition. He became commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in 1930. At that time, it was becoming apparent that Prohibition was losing public support, and Anslinger shifted his focus from alcohol to marijuana. Anslinger utilized the press, whipping up public hysteria with exaggerated claims of the evils of the devil weed.
There's no doubt, I think, when you look at this history, that the enactment of marijuana prohibition, both at the state level and then at the national level, was not based on science at all. The story of Harry Anslinger's role in the prohibition of marijuana and the criminalization of marijuana users is a very interesting story. It's almost comical when you go back and you read some of the newspaper accounts and some of the rhetoric surrounding the prohibition of marijuana to see these incredibly exaggerated assertions, such as that marijuana would take normal people upon smoking it and make them assassins overnight, or that inevitably it would lead to insanity, in a larger sense, to debauchery and immorality.
Master. Master! Wait, Master!
What Anslinger did is basically sort of assemble all these forces and kind of harness all this energy against marijuana as the assassin of youth and use it as the tool for promoting the adoption of the Uniform Narcotic Drug Act. And it worked.
A few years later, Anslinger would achieve his ultimate goal, the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937.
The Marijuana Tax Act was passed at the national level in 1937. And that the story about the prohibition of marijuana was basically a story emerging in the 1930s and largely driven by Harry Anslinger.
New immigrant populations were changing the face of American society, and alcohol prohibition had given rise to organized crime and increased violence. Anslinger played the race card and the fear card, as politicians so often have in America, and it worked.
50% of the violent crimes committed in districts occupied by Mexicans, Greeks, Turks, Filipinos, Spaniards, Latin Americans, and Negroes may be traced to the use of marijuana. I believe in some cases one cigarette might develop a homicidal mania, probably to kill his brother. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster marijuana, he would drop dead of fright. Harry J. Anslinger.
To learn more and to obtain a free copy of the informational booklet, Marijuana, It's Time for a Conversation, please visit marijuanaconversation.org. During the hearings before Congress on the Marijuana Tax Act, the lone dissenting voice was Dr. William Woodward of the American Medical Association. Dr. Woodward pointed out that all of Anslinger's testimony was based on hearsay and exaggerated newspaper editorials, and that Congress had not been presented one single shred of actual evidence of marijuana's supposed dangers. Harry Anslinger remained head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics from 1930 until 1962.
And in those 30 years, he was pretty busy building up his bureaucracy, primarily because he wanted to protect the jobs of all of the alcohol prohibition agents who no longer had work to do after alcohol prohibition was repealed. So a lot of his anti-marijuana propaganda was designed to make sure that there would be full employment for them.
You know, and ironically, even though he's building that bureaucracy all that time and starting to put into place these very harsh penalties and harsh sentences, the popularity of marijuana was continuing to grow, especially in the 60s, when it all of a sudden became a political symbol for unrest and civil disobedience.
Shall we start? This is a song you guys probably recognize. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us soulless sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country. Wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. Brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. Wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. Brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks again, Dr. Levesque.
Yay.
Appreciate your program.
Glad to help you. We're glad to have him back here tonight.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. We have a little film clip we're going to roll, and we'll be back in just a second to take more phone calls, comments, and questions. Stay tuned.
The book also takes us on a journey of the bizarre, the curious origin of marijuana prohibition. Only in the 20th century did the ancient hemp plant become a frightening new drug. The Mexican slang word, marijuana, was unknown to most Americans until it began appearing in newspaper headlines early in the century. Marijuana horror stories, works of pure fiction, were staples of the sensationalistic newspapers owned by William Randolph Hearst. But even respectable papers printed outrageous tales. Although this story would be relegated to the tabloids today, it was fit to print in the distinguished New York Times on July 6, 1927. A Mexican woman and her 4 children are driven insane by marijuana, the New York Times reported. It went on to say that neighbors rushed to the house to find the entire family insane.
It is convinced that he is hopelessly and incurably insane, a condition caused by the drug marijuana to which he was addicted. It is recommended, Your Honor, that the defendant be placed at an institution for the criminally insane for the rest of his natural life.
The next tragedy may be that of your daughter, or your son, or yours, or yours, or yours.
When driving down the road and the sheriff smells your load, you better make it to the woods if you can.
Although alcohol prohibition required a constitutional amendment, marijuana prohibition was brought about by a single federal law, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. The driving force behind this law was Harry J. Anslinger, America's first drug czar.
You better make it to the woods if you can. If you can, if you can.
Anslinger was the government's expert witness during 1937 congressional hearings on the proposed Marijuana Tax Act. As proof of marijuana's malevolence, Anslinger introduced into evidence the bogus Hearst newspaper headlines that trumpeted the violence, insanity, and death allegedly caused by marijuana.
In 1937, when the Marijuana Tax Act was established, there were no data of any sort, much less scientific, about whether this compound was harmful or not. There was just evidence it was being used by people whom we distrusted and feared, and that it was associated with lower class people.
You go back and read the record in Congress, it's amazing the lack of information. There were literally questions by members of Congress saying, what is this marijuana? Is it a narcotic or what is it? And there would be a sentence, someone would stand up and say, oh, it's the most dangerous new drug coming down the pipe.
In terms of what Congress knew in 1937, they didn't know any of that history. The only history that they were given was all these cock and bull stories about how it made people crazy and they went out and killed people under the influence of marijuana.
The Tax Act was built on lies, and I think it's outrageous that we have legislation that still exists today it was based on lies.
Despite opposition by the American Medical Association, Congress passed the law unanimously after debating for a grand total of 90 seconds. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed it into law on August 3, 1937. Theoretically, the new law did not actually prohibit marijuana and hemp. Only a constitutional amendment could do that. But by imposing prohibitive taxes and mountains of red tape, it made cultivation, processing, sales, and any use of the hemp plant whatsoever virtually impossible. Technically, farmers could still legally grow a hemp plant like this one, but only if they could somehow grow it without the leaves and flowers. This law is still in effect today. The full reasons behind marijuana prohibition are still being debated. Some experts think racism played a part.
So that when poor people, immigrants, take the drugs, we're afraid they're going to rise up, smite, steal, and take the white women. And so we outlaw the drugs because of our fears over that.
Others think Harry Anslinger was motivated by ambition.
So, Jim, I know you were down in Southern Oregon playing a gig a few weeks ago talking about our state legislature and how the community has to support.
Yes.
Yeah, give back. You want to, I really liked what you were saying. You want to kind of share that with our audience here?
Well, you know, the basic idea of it is that, you know, everybody has benefited greatly from these laws that have been created here. And a lot of people have laid a lot of groundwork, and like Paul and Tim here, and created a situation where the people here have a beautiful thing that they're able to do. You know, you're able to garden at home, you're able to grow your own medical marijuana at home, and here we are getting into this political situation where, you know, we had some pretty good victories here over the last so many years, and it's also led to this positive environment to bring about a medical marijuana law. And so the thing is that what I have been driving at is that it's important for you people to remember that don't kick back on your laurels. Don't just sit back, you know, thinking, oh, well, we passed that, it's all good to go now. You have to check your county. You have to talk to your people. You need to find out who's running in your area. You know, some of your people are very unfriendly to your cause, and they've been voted into office just recently. One of them sits on one of the judiciary committees.
Sure.
For instance, you know, and these people, they've got a way of getting in there, and then they get in there and they start throwing a wrench, and I'm not, you know, not talking all that political, but, you know, we got some pretty extreme people that have gotten into office.
That's true.
And they're really looking to turn things around. Example, Montana. Look what's happened there recently. That legislature starts to turn around a little bit, and all of a sudden you could see these laws going away. You know, and the way that I noticed about laws going away is, heck, they don't even really say a lot till they visit you. So, you know, you have to be very careful. And, you know, keep up your guard right now, folks, you know. Check your politics and make sure to vote and get the right people in there that support this cause, you know.
Here we have one of the classic strains of all time, Panama Red. This has been a favorite of mine for years. The first time I smoked this plant was and that was, some 30 years ago. It's a classic sativa. Look at the size of this leaf. The blades are huge. This is a classic indica or afghanica leaf, however you want to look at it. But notice it's very, very broad leaf and short. Both these plants are approximately the same age. And you can see how much more robust the indica plant is than the sativa. This is going to be probably your biggest indicator of what type of plant you have. The sativas have a much fluffier, lighter bud than the indicas. The sativa can often be 20 feet tall, 4 meters or more. That's a tall plant. They've got a huge root system, and they're much more drought tolerant than the indicas. The sativa takes longer to grow. The high is more of a soaring, never-ending high. The indica, the high with it, is more of a lethargic, heavy stone, a body stone, if you will. Indica is much more dense and strong, thicker and heavier. The indicas do not grow as tall. They're short, squat, and bushy. They can take more cold than the sativa, and overall, they're just a tougher plant. And what does the beginning grower need to grow? Indicas in general are easier to grow than sativas, but it just kind of depends on the variety. What I would suggest is to use a cross between an indica and a sativa and get one that's good for beginners, such as a Northern Lights cross. Okay, well, here we are in a flowering garden, and as you can see, the plants have budded. Cannabis flowers when the days become shorter and plants are signaled that the annual life cycle is coming to an end. This occurs naturally outdoors in the autumn, but must be regulated indoors by the grower. Ideal female plants grow squat and bushy with branches close together on the stem and dense foliage on branches. In most commonly grown strains, the first signs of female flowers appear 1 to 3 weeks after inducing flowering with a 12-hour photoperiod. What that means is it's 12 hours of light and 12 hours of uninterrupted darkness every 24 hours. That induces flowering. The 12-hour photoperiod, or the 12-12 day-night cycle, is induced usually when the plants are approximately 1 foot tall. That would be about this tall right here, about 1 foot. This plant over here has just started to flower for about 10 days. And what you have is the beginnings of a flowering plant. The little white pistils are starting to show. Female flowers initially appear at the top of the terminal or uppermost bud and gradually develop on lower branches. Flowers have 2 small, 1/4 to 1/2 inch fuzzy white hairs called pistils that form a V. This set of pistils is attached at the base to an ovule. It's self-contained within a light green pod called the seed bract. The entire thing is called a calyx. Pistil-packed calyxes form dense clusters or buds along stems. Buds put on much of their harvest weight as they swell during the last 2 or 3 weeks of growth. When a female is flowering at its zenith, the pistils swell in size and also change in color, most often from white to amber and eventually reddish brown.
Good evening there, J Mac and Big Dub.
Hey Paul, how's it going?
Hey, it's great to have you on.
Thank you, thank you. I know we've been talking about it for a little while, and you know, my buddy was out of town working in some studio doing some stuff in L.A. It's good to be here. It's good to be part of the Hippo community, the worldwide community that we're streaming around the world.
So I noticed you've got a new CD called Heavily Medicated.
Yes,
absolutely. We'll show that to our audience here in a little while, but that looks like a pretty good disc.
Yeah, man, it's full of music about, you know, medical marijuana, its virtues, and it's got a little bit of humor and comedy to it, along with a good message.
Right.
Cool. Great. All right, so you have some music you want to perform here, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to do a song for you. This song that we're about to do was actually inspired by the World Cannabis Cafe. It was the first place in Portland, Oregon, where I actually first went, enjoyed myself.
Great.
It's called Mary Jane, and all of us here enjoy it and its benefits, and we got to fight to legalize it. So without any further ado, we'd like to welcome you to Heavily Medicated Music.
Yes.
I go by the name of J Mac, along with my partner. He goes by the name of Big Dub.
Yes.
This evening, music is being provided For my friends, my family, they go by the name of the Lab Rats. Give it up for the Lab Rats. Give it up for the Lab Rats. Hey. Give it up for the Lab Rats. Give it up for the Lab Rats. Hey. Give it up for the Lab Rats. Give it up for the Lab Rats. Hey. Yeah. Yo, Dub, where we going tonight, man? What's Saturday night?
Meet me at the cafe.
Where's it at?
When you get to D, come take a ride. I'ma be there all day.
All day doing what?
Smoking on something nice. I'm tired of stressing. My body's aching. I wish this pain would go away. My addiction is my prescription, and I need it every day. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Need it every day. Doctor, doctor, here's the news. I got a bad case of putting weed in my food, and I smoke every night before the 6 o'clock news, and at least 2 blunts before I put on my shoes. I put bud butter on my purple haze pancakes. I got a little for my pains and aches, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and switch up the day. So if you find yourself around my way, you can meet me at the cafe.
Where's it at?
When you get to D, come take a ride. I'ma be there all day.
What you doing, Dub?
Smoking on something nice. I'm tired of stressing. My body's aching. I wish this pain would go away. My addiction is my prescription, and I need it every day. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Need it every day. Now here I go out the door.
Not the chronic episode, trying to squeeze these 28 hours in the 24. The liquor store? No, I'm hiding by the cafe. They keep that green up in them jars every single day. I'm blowing wood, Orlando, smoking big with Don Juan. And the ace lady handed me the gravity bomb. He said, follow the smoke, don't choke. But I did it anyway. I'm getting blown away. Yeah, come on. When you get the D, go take a ride.
I'ma be there all day.
Doing what, Dub? Smoking on something nice. I'm tired of stressing. My body's aching. I wish this pain would go away. My addiction is my prescription, and I need it every day. Mary Jane, 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 Jane.
Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Oh, Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Mary Jane, 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 Jane.
Need it every day. Lab Rats gonna give them some. This is music y'all can smoke to. Music y'all can roll to. Let it soothe your soul, you dig?
Oregon, the Northwest, the whole world, how you doing?
Let's see if they'll do that with us. Yeah. Big Dub in the building. Tell them where they can get the music at, family.
Yeah, man, you can go to iTunes and get it.
Yeah.
Just type back Big Dub on iTunes.
Yeah. Big ups to THCF. They in the building. Yeah. One love to the worldwide. Cafe. When you get to D, come take a ride. All day doing what? Smoking on something nice. Stressing, my body's aching. I wish this pain would go away. My addiction is my prescription, and I need it every day. Mary Jane, 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 Jane. Some you can roll to, some you can smoke to. Heavily medicated. Thank y'all for allowing us to be here. Big up to Tim. Big up to Paul. Much love to the studio audience.
Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. For thousands of years even then, this plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. For the sailor, no less than the hangman, hemp was indispensable. A 44-gun frigate, like our cherished old Ironsides, took over 60 tons of hemp for rigging, including an anchor cable 25 inches in circumference. The Conestoga wagons and prairie schooners of pioneer days were covered with hempen canvas. Indeed, the very word canvas comes from the Arabic word for hemp. In those days, hemp was an important crop in Kentucky and Missouri. Then came cheaper imported fibers for cordage, like jute, sisal, and manila hemp, and the culture of hemp in America declined. But now, with Philippine and East Indian sources of hemp in the hands of the Japanese, and shipment of jute from India curtailed, American hemp must meet the needs of our Army and Navy as well as of our industries. In 1942, patriotic farmers at the government's request planted 36,000 acres of seed hemp, an increase of several thousand%. The goal for 1943 is 50,000 acres of seed hemp. In Kentucky, much of the seed hemp acreage is on river bottom land such as this, along the Kentucky River Gorge. Some of these fields are inaccessible except by boat. Thus, plans are afoot for a great expansion of the hemp industry as a part of the war program. This film is designed to tell farmers how to handle this ancient crop, now little known outside Kentucky and Wisconsin. This is hemp seed. Be careful how you use it. For to grow hemp legally, you must have a federal registration and tax stamp. This is provided for in your contract. Ask your AAA committeeman or your county agent about it. Don't forget, hemp demands a rich, well-drained soil such as is found here in the bluegrass region of Kentucky or in central Wisconsin. It must be loose and rich in organic matter. Poor soils won't do. Soil that will grow good corn will usually grow hemp. Hemp is not hard on the soil. In Kentucky, it has been grown for several years on the same ground, though this practice is not recommended. A dense and shady crop, hemp tends to choke out weeds. Here's a Canada thistle that couldn't stand the competition. Dead as a dodo. Thus, hemp leaves the ground in good condition for the following crop. For fiber, hemp should be sown 5 pecks to the acre. With drill, the closer the rows, the better. These rows are spaced about 4 inches. This hemp has been broadcast. Either way, it should be sown thick enough to grow a slender stalk. Here's an ideal stand. The right height to be harvested easily, thick enough to grow slender stalks that are easy to cut and process. Stalks like these here on the left, they yield the most fiber and the best. Those on the right are too coarse and woody. For seed, hemp is planted in hills like corn, sometimes by hand. Hemp is a dioecious plant. The female flower is inconspicuous, but the male flower is easily spotted. In seed production, after the pollen has been shed, these male plants are cut out. These are the seeds on a female plant. Hemp for fiber is ready to harvest when the pollen is shedding and the leaves are falling. In Kentucky, hemp harvest comes in August. Here, the old standby has been the self-rake reaper, which has been used for a generation or more. Hemp grows so luxuriantly in Kentucky that harvesting is sometimes difficult, which may account for the popularity of the self-rake with its lateral stroke. A modified rice binder has been used to some extent. This machine works well in average hemp.
I know that we had some news coverage, and so we're going to roll a little excerpt of that and be back in just a moment, so stay tuned.
If you legalize it, you save money on the police or making arrests on petty crimes like that.
And the push to make marijuana available in stores throughout Oregon with no medical marijuana card required. While you could end up deciding that debate. A new push to sell pot in stores kicked off in Oregon today, and you would not need a medical marijuana card to buy it.
Supporters of this idea say it would generate hundreds of millions of dollars for Oregon every year, and they want voters to make the final call.
K2's Susan Harding joins us with more on this story. And Susan, the person spearheading this particular effort, really no stranger to the issue at all, right?
Absolutely. This person leading the effort has been trying to legalize pot in Oregon since 1984. But this time, he thinks even the name of the measure will get people's attention. It's called the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act.
Would you like a card to get more information about the act?
Each MAX train may bring Jennifer Alexander closer to her destination.
Excuse me, sir. Are you registered to vote in Oregon? Are you registered? Are you registered? Are you guys registered to vote? I'm collecting signatures to legalize marijuana.
With each stop comes another chance to get a signature to put legalizing marijuana on the November 2012 ballot.
Are you interested in signing the petition to legalize marijuana, regulated like alcohol?
I just smoke some weed, good.
And I understand some of the arguments against marijuana, but I don't think any of them justify locking up people and wasting all the money that we do on enforcing prohibition. Have a great day. Let me give you a fresh sheet because this sheet is all used up.
Saving taxpayers money is at the heart of the strategy this time, and to some, it's an argument that works.
If you legalize it, you save money on the police or making arrests on petty crimes like that.
July 7th. 2012, but
the chief petitioner, Paul Stanford, says polls show most people on the West Coast support legalizing pot.
There's a big sea change. There have been polls by Zogby and other organizations.
Next year, Washington, Oregon, and California may all have marijuana measures on the ballot. Supporters say legalization would raise $140 million in taxes for Oregon and save $60 million in law enforcement costs.
Are you interested in signing the petition to legalize marijuana and regulate it like alcohol?
Sure.
But not everyone is lining up to sign up.
I don't think that it's good to have drugs at all.
Adina Tudurache worries legalizing pot would put more dangerous drivers on the road.
I mean, I actually had a cousin who almost died because of someone was high driving and he was riding his bike, so I definitely don't think that that's a good idea.
And supporters have plenty of time to collect their signatures. Their deadline is July of 2012. Live in Northeast Portland, Susan Harding, K2 News.
And Susan, we thank you. So what do you think about this? At 5 o'clock, we asked you this K2 web poll question. Do you support relaxing Oregon medical marijuana laws to make it easier for adults to grow and use marijuana? More than 740 of you responded so far. 55% support relaxing the laws, 40% do not, 4% are not sure.
New at 8:30, a new petition to legalize marijuana in Oregon is circulating. Supporters say Oregon's Secretary of State approved the form of the petition last week, and they hope to convince 90,000 Oregonians to sign it. KPTV's Jim Hyde talked to both sides and has the story.
If supporters gather enough signatures, the measure would appear on the November 2012 general election ballot. Supporters of the initiative say marijuana would be taxed and sold through state-licensed stores. The measure would also permit adults to grow their own marijuana for personal use. The chief petitioners also say the measure allows farmers to grow cannabis hemp for other uses, from diesel fuel to fiber to food. The supporters say the measure would raise $140 million from taxing commercial sales of marijuana and save more than $61 million in police, jail, and court costs now being spent on marijuana cases.
We're hiring petitioners, we are recruiting volunteers, and we also have an online campaign. The Secretary of State's provided us with a single page, single signature e-petition, so it can be downloaded on our website.
I'm against any marijuana store sales. I recently lost a family member to drug use. Not marijuana, but I I personally believe that marijuana is a stepping stone to harder drugs.
Supporters of what they call the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act say it would not change the existing laws on medical marijuana and DUII. Reporting in News Control, Jim Hyde, the 8 o'clock news.
Good job. Thanks, man.
Now is the time. Time is now to tell the truth, to hear the truth, to know the truth. Oppressive lies and fantasies isn't how it has to be. And ignorance throwing stones like so many brainless clones. Sound the alarm, re-educate. Sound the alarm, investigate. Now is the time for the truth. Whoa. Now is the time. Whoa, whoa. Now is the time. Time is now to speak the truth. Speak the truth. Corporations, governments are rarely ever innocent. Live to see another day. Sound the alarm, re-educate.